Okay. So we'll also be looking at the interdisciplinary perspective, looking at the sociology, the economic, the environmental, the engineering, and the different perspective of sustainable development. Then we'll look at the key challenges and opportunities in sustainable social development. And the second topic we'll be looking at is the ecological, economic, and social equity. Then we'll look at the social capital and community development. Then we look at human development and well-being. Then finally, on my part, we look at governance, institution, and sustainability. So, BRICS money, let's continue with the concept of sustainable development. When we talk about sustainable development, it refers to development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. Development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own need. Any development that meets the need of today and compromise future generation is not a sustainable development. It's not a sustainable development. And that's why we are trying to explain this concept. You must understand that for every development, you are not just developing for the now. You are developing to meet the need of today and to equally meet the need in the future. Sustainable development in its concept is broad and involving concept that is rooted in integration of environmental, social, and economic consideration in decision making and development process. Now, when you are talking about sustainable development, you are not just looking for the environmental issues involved. You will also look at the social issue involved. What are the social risks? What are the social situations involved? Then you look at economic consideration. At this point, you look at both the developer, the community, and everybody involved. What are the economic issues in it? So for you to make a well-informed decision, it becomes very, very important to note that if you are considering sustainable development, you must put into consideration key issues that are involved: the environment, the social issue, and the economic issue. Okay. Let's look at some core principles of sustainable development. Some core principles of sustainable development. One of the first principles I would like us to look at is what we call intergenerational equity. Intergenerational equity. The second principle is precautionary principle. Precautionary principle. Then the third principle is participation and inclusiveness. Participation and inclusiveness. Then the fourth principle is what we call the resilience and adaptability principle. So let's start by looking at the intergenerational equity. What do we really mean when we talk about intergenerational equity? It's actually ensuring that the future generation have access to the resources and environment necessary for their well-being. Intergenerational equity. You are having the future generation in mind, ensuring that the future generation have access to the same resources that we are having today, in order for these resources to meet their demand and their well-being in the future. So it goes beyond satisfying ourselves today. Sustainable development, considering the intergenerational equity, means that the other generation after this generation should have the same access that we have to the resources that enables us to live better and do well. Then the second principle is what we call the precautionary principle. And again, let me explain some concepts under the intergenerational principles. There are some few pillars, particularly 3 pillars of intergenerational principle. And the pillar is what we call the environmental sustainability, the economic sustainability, and the social sustainability. So these are the 3 pillars of integration when we talk of intergenerational equity. You must look at the environment. And what do? You are protecting the ecosystem, reducing pollution, and managing natural resources responsibly. We ensure that the ecosystem is adequately and well protected. If not, there will be a challenge in the future. Under the environmental sustainability, again, we will ensure that we reduce pollution to the barest minimum. If pollution is reduced today, the future will be guaranteed. And to equally ensure that we manage natural resources responsibly. You don't use natural resources with the intention of using it to the detriment of tomorrow. You use natural resources responsibly to meet the need of the present and the need of the future. The second pillar under this integration is what we call the economic sustainability. Under the economic sustainability, we ensure that we promote stable and inclusive economic growth that benefit all sectors of the society. You are not just promoting economic growth, but you are promoting economic growth that are inclusive and also benefit all sectors of the society. Please, are we together?
Sir, yes, sir, we're together.
Are you understanding me?
Yes, very well, sir.
Understanding you, sir. Understanding by a bit fast.
Okay, I'm a bit fast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to meet up with the time that we have lost, but I will try my best to regulate myself.
Because we are taking some notes as you are
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm going to download the material for you at the end of my lecture.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for that.
Ones you can take note of.
You, sir.
You take note of.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not dictating note for you. I like you to understand what I am explaining. Are you understanding that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The other pillar, the third pillar, is what we call the social sustainability. In the place of social sustainability, we are ensuring that there is a social equity. There is human rights and access to essential services such as education and healthcare. So these are the 3 pillars of integration when we talk about the principle of intergenerational equity. Please, are you following me?
Yes,
then
sir.
the
Yes,
next
sir.
principle is what we call the precautionary principle. What do we mean by the precautionary principle? When we talk about the precautionary principle, we are saying that you are acting to prevent environmental degradation, even if some causes and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. You are taking precaution to ensure that environmental degradation is prevented to the yes. Ensure that environmental degradation is prevented. Even though you have not established those things scientifically. You just needed to ensure that the cause and effect relationship are minimized to the barest minimum. Basically, that is what we looked at for when we talk about precautionary principle. Is you taking precaution even while you have not established the issue scientifically, but you ensure that degradation, environmental degradation, is avoided and prevented. The third principle is the principle of participation and inclusiveness. The principle of participation and inclusiveness. When we talk about participation and inclusiveness, what we really mean here is that you are involving the communities, the stakeholders, the marginalized group in decision-making process. You don't impose issues and projects on them. You allow the people involved, the community, to participate, the stakeholders to participate, the marginalized group. All of it should be involved in the decision-making process. If that is done, then we are saying that you are upholding the principle of participation and inclusiveness. The tendency to neglect the marginalized are always there. So we are saying that you don't neglect them. You involve the marginalized group in decision-making. You ensure that the community participates in decision-making. If you don't involve the community after implementing any project or anything, there is no way that project will be sustainable, because the people that needed to ensure sustainability were not carried along. And since they are not carried along, issues will be coming up. The next principle is the principle of resilience and adaptability. What do we mean by that? By this, we mean that you are building systems that can adapt to environmental, economic, and social changes. You don't just build a system anyhow, but you build a system that can adapt to environmental changes. You build a system that can adapt to economic changes. You build a system that can adapt to social changes. These are very, very key when we talk about the issue of environmental sustainability, when we talk about the principles of environmental sustainability. The next point is that let's quickly have a brainstorm on what we call milestones and framework of sustainable development. There are some few individuals that have done some work on sustainable development. There are some reports. We just look at them. We just brush through them. At your convenience, you can do more findings about them. One of such is the Brundtland Report of 1987. Basically, they introduced a widely accepted definition of sustainable development. The definition of sustainable development that we looked at from the beginning, that it is you using the present resources with the ability of compromising it to ensure that the future generation benefit from it, was widely defined and accepted by Brundtland Report in 1987. There's another report we call the Agenda 21. The Agenda 21 was 1992 Earth Summit, when they were brainstorming on land and health issue, health, EARTH. A comprehensive plan for sustainable development was developed worldwide, and this plan is still invoked up to today. Another milestone is the Millennium Development Goals of 2000 to 2015, where global goals focus on poverty reduction and human development. This is very, very key. The MDG came up 2000 to 2015 for those of us that can remember. And the focus of this MDG is to see how poverty is drastically reduced and how human development will be upgraded. And so many people benefited from this. These are also part of the milestone for sustainable development. Another milestone was what we call the MDG, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, from 2025 to 2030. And there were 17 interconnected global goals adopted by the United Nations. And these were covering areas like poverty, areas like inequality, areas like and peace. So there were basically 17. I would like us to go through them at our leisure. And one of those goals is the goal of no poverty. The SDG came up with this particular focus to ensure that poverty is completely eradicated. The second goal of health was zero hunger, to ensure that no one is hungry, there is food sufficiency. Then the third was good health and well-being. The number 4 was quality education. Ensure that everybody have access to quality education. We have what we call gender equality. We have clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth. The other one was industry, innovations and infrastructure. Another goal was to reduce inequality. Then we have sustainable cities and community. Then we have responsible consumption and production. We have climate action. We have life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And we have partnership for the goals. These were the 17 interconnected global goals adopted by the United Nations. I just decided to glance through them. At your level, I'd like you to go and do an in-depth study on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We may be making reference to them later. So these are basically the milestones and framework for sustainable development and framework for sustainable development. So the next thing we quickly look at, we'll look at the challenges of sustainable development. The challenges.
Musa, off your microphone. TV, off your microphone.
The next topic.
Your microphone.
Okay, so we're going to look at.
Please, sir, just hold on. Let them off their microphones, please. And Philip Ondengu, your microphone is still on. Emmanuel, your microphone is on, please. And take note. Before your microphone is on, please.
Okay, please, all of you, off your mic. Off your mic.
Please.
Well, so let's quickly look at the challenges.
Sorry, Dr. Abba.
Yes, sir.
Otpanachi, are you there? Please, anybody that is not using his or her name, remove the person from the lecture. We are saying techno this, it exists. We are going to take attendance. And if your name is Techno, how do we know you are the one? Please, anybody who has not changed to his name or her name, remove the person from the lecture. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
So thank you, my HOD. So let's quickly look at the challenges to sustainable development. The first challenge is what we call climate change and environmental degradation. is a basic and major challenge when we talk about sustainable development. You cannot predict the climatic happenings these times. So you discover that the issue of climate change is a great challenge to sustainable development. Environmental degradation, a lot of degradation, environmental degradation everywhere. All of these are posing serious challenge to sustainable development. The other challenge is what we call social and economic inequality. The issue of social and economic inequality is really a challenge. This talk about the gap existing between the various social strata, social groups, in terms of social inequality, in terms of economic inequality. And all of these are really affecting sustainable development. The issue of overconsumption and resource depletion. See, a lot of our forests have been deforested already, converting our trees into charcoals. Resources have been depleted because of overuse. And this overuse and resource depletion is having serious negative effect on sustainable development. So it become a very serious concern and issue to consider. The governance and political instability is another serious challenge. When governance, policies emanating from government, the way government handle issues are basic challenges. They are challenges that are affecting sustainable development, inconsistencies in government policy, and the likes. Then the issue of technological and infrastructural gap in developing countries. Most of the developing countries are suffering from infrastructural and technological improvement. Many of them, there is a serious gap when it comes to the issue of technology in developing countries. We have not been able to meet up with the realities of the infrastructures that are needed for enhancing sustainable development. So it becomes a concern and a burden. Very key that we need to look into that. Very important. Let's look at sustainable development in practice. What are the things that we need to do to ensure sustainable development? The first is what we call green technology. And what we mean by that, we are talking about renewable energies, using electric vehicle and eco-friendly materials. We don't use materials that are harmful to the environment. We don't use energies that are not renewable. So when we're emphasizing on renewable energy or electric vehicles will reduce the emissions, carbon dioxide from our vehicles that are causing environmental pollutions and left and right. There are materials we have been using that are not eco-friendly. So we're saying that there is a need for improvement and increase in green technology. The second sustainable development practices in vogue is what we call circular economy. And what do we mean by that? We mean that you are reducing waste by reusing, recycling, and repairing. You see, many of our organizations are really hard for that. We don't use issues and discard them again. We are looking for how this very material that have been used can be reused again. How do we recycle them? How do we repair them? And this helps sustainable development. The third practice is what we call corporate social responsibility. And basically, we mean that businesses integrating sustainability into their operation. Now, every business you do, you should ensure that sustainability is introduced into it. It's very, very key when we talk about the idea of sustainable development. It's a practice that is actually needed and required. The next point is what we call urban planning, creating sustainable cities with green infrastructures, with efficient transport and energy efficient building. So when you are talking about building infrastructures, you should have in mind to engage on infrastructures that are green infrastructures. Vehicles, transportation means that are efficient. Buildings that are energy efficient. So basically, for sustainable development in practice, these four key issues are very vital. The idea of green technology, the idea of circular economy, the idea of corporate social responsibility, and the idea of urban planning is very, very key. So let's quickly look at historical context and evolution of sustainable development theories. The concept of sustainable development has evolved over time in response to growing awareness of environmental degradation, social inequality, and economic instability. So when we are looking at the matter of sustainability development, we try to see how do we respond to the growing awareness of environmental degradation. Everywhere, areas that were not suffering from environmental degradation, they are already suffering from it. The issue of social inequality, the challenge of economic instability. They want to look at how this evolved over the years. History reflects a shift from purely economic growth model to more integrated framework that balance ecological, social, and economic priorities. So when we are talking about this, we are not talking about just purely economic growth. We are talking about economic growth that consider balance of ecological issues, of social issues, and economic priorities. They are very, very, very fundamental that we cannot overlook. So let's quickly look at some of those history. Sorry. So the first thing we look at is the early foundation, the pre-Zot foundation. The early foundation, that is the pre-20th century. The pre-20th century. And at this point, we are looking at the pre-industrial societies. Often practice forms of sustainability out of necessity, relying on local resources and traditional ecological knowledge. So the early foundations, basically what they do, they are practicing forms of sustainability out of necessity. And their basis of information and knowledge were shallow. They rely on local resources and their traditional ecological knowledge. The philosopher like John Stuart Mill in 1806 to 1874 discussed the idea of stationarity state economy, hinting on the limit of growth. So basically, this is what the early foundation, the pre-20th century, talks about. Then the second history is the Industrial Revolution and its impact. And that is the 18th and 19th century. The Industrial Revolution brought about rapid economic growth, but also widespread of environmental degradation. While economic growth was increasing and enhanced, environmental degradation was also multiplying. And at this point, we had what we call the environmental cost, where we had what we call air and water pollution, where a lot of deforestation took place. Places that were originally forest reserve were converted to urban area, were converted to building where people live. So forests were affected. And as a result of that, channels and routes for water flow were converted to building and enhances degradation. And again, the urban city became overcrowded, which became more visible. Places that were not crowded before, in the Industrial Revolution era, became crowded. However, during this period, the dominant worldwide was anthropocentric, which focused on human progress with little regard for nature. They were not considering nature at all. Their emphasis was on human progress. Their emphasis was on human progress. And this rise of environmental awareness, that is the third one. Rise of environmental awareness, which happened in 1950 to 1970s. Very key. So we have the post-World War II growth, which is the number 3. This one brought prosperity, but also unsustainable resource use. And the key milestone for the post-worldwide world growth was the issue of Rachel Carson, the Silent Spring in 1962, which exposed the dangers of pesticides like DDT, like spark modem, and environmentalism. All of these were exposed by Rachel. The Club of Rome limits to growth in 1972, the system that analyzes warming of resources, depletion due to exponential growth. Then we have the UN Conference on the Human Environmental by Stockholm in 1972, where the first major global environmental conference launches the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program. All of these were actually post-World War II growth. Then we have number 3, the formalization of sustainable development. And this happened in 1980s, where we have World Conservation Strategies in 1980 by IUCN, by the UNEP, and by the WWF, where they introduced the term sustainable development. And just as I explained before, that the first person that actually defined sustainable development that had a wide acceptance was actually Brundtland Report, officially tied to Our Common Future by the World Commission on Environment and Development, on Environment and Development. Again, to bring to our knowledge what is sustainable development. I've done a lot of explanation. I've done a lot of introduction. But I like to say it categorically that when we talk about development, sustainable development, we are talking about development that meet the need of the present
The class is still on.
without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own need. Very, very key, because you cannot just say, my own is to meet my need today. What happened tomorrow doesn't bother me. No. Sustainable development means that whatsoever you are doing today, you must not do it at the detriment of the future. You must not do it. There's an old story we were told of a man that was going to the farm and eventually decided to respond to nature and stop by the roadside instead of entering the bush and defecated. Several passed through that route and never noticed that somebody defecated by the roadside. But when that man was returning back, unconsciously his eye turned to what he did in the morning and he was uncomfortable. The point of explaining that story is to let us know that any development that compromise future benefit is a terrible development. It's not a sustainable development. It's not a sustainable development. We have the institutionalization action, which happened in 1990s, 90 to 2000. In 1992, the Earth Summit, that is the Radionier, adopted an Agenda 21. It's a comprehensive sustainability action plan led to the Real Declaration and Convention on Biodiversity, on Climate Change and Desertification. In 1997, the Kyoto Protocol, the first binding agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emission. In 2000, where we talk about the Millennium Development Goal, they set 8 goals to address the global poverty and development, with some overlap with sustainability and with some overlap with sustainability. Basically, these are the institutionalization and global action that really took place. Then we have the integration of sustainability in global policy, which happened in 2010 to present. In 2015, the Sustainable Development Goal, which I explained the 17 goals just now to us, adopted by the United Nations member state. It was a comprehensive and interconnected, covering climate change, covering health, education, gender equality, and sustainable economic growth. Then we also have the Paris Agreement in 2015, which committed nations to limit global warming to below 2 degrees centigrade. And the concepts are like circular economy, the green growth, the climate justice, the just transition, and they gain popularity. Very, very key. Very, very key. Let's look at the theoretical contribution to sustainable development. The first theory is the ecological modernization theory. And this theory suggests that environmental protection and economic growth can coexist through innovation and technology. They can coexist, that is, environmental protection and economic growth can coexist through innovation and technology. When the right innovation and technology are put in place, environmental protection and economic growth can go hand in hand. And that's the basic emphasis of the ecological modernization theory. We have what we call the steady state economy, which is actually the AMA Delhi. And this advocates for economic growth system that operate within ecological limits, emphasizing quality of life over quantity of growth. I'd like you to underline that word, that the advocation for economic system that operate within ecological limit. And I say the emphasis here is quality of life over quality of growth. That growth should not negate the quality of life. Every improvement in life and growth that is not yielding the expected result is not a good one. It's not a good one. Then we have what we call the strong versus weak sustainability. The weak sustainability, natural capital can be substituted with human-made capital. Then the strong sustainability is certain natural resources and ecological functions are irreplaceable. I'd like you to take note that when we talk about the weak sustainability, there are some natural capital that can be substituted with human-made capital. There are capital that are human-made that can be used in place of natural capital. Then we talk about strong sustainability. And as at this point, we are saying that certain natural resources and ecological functions are irreplaceable. There are some natural resources that human capital cannot replace. There are ecological functions that cannot be replaced by human capital. So they are irreplaceable. Then the fourth of the theoretical contribution is the system thinking and resilience theory. The system thinking The system thinking and resilience theory emphasizes interconnectivity and adaptability of socio-ecological systems. So it emphasizes interconnectivity and adaptability of socio-ecological systems.
Excuse me, sir, please. Philip, please, can you off your mic? Philip, please, off your mic. Sorry, sir.
It focuses on building resilience to shocks like climate change and pandemics. That is basically what the system thinking and resilience theory focus on. To build resilience to shocks. When there are shocks from climate change, you're able to build resilience. When there are pandemics, you're able to build resilience. So basically,
excuse me, sir, please. Philip is making things difficult for us. What is taking him to off that mic?
Point I'd like us to dwell and focus on is interdisciplinary perspective on sustainable development. The various disciplines have their various perspectives. We're looking at the environmental, the economic, the sociology, the engineering. What are their perspectives to sustainable development? If this is a face-to-face class, I would have categorized us into our various disciplines. Then we'll all brainstorm. How do we look at sustainable development from the point of sociological student, as a sociologist, as an economist, as an engineer? How do you look at sustainable development? So basically, let's start with the environmental, the ecology. What is their focus? Their focus is to understand the natural system and human impact on the environment. How does the natural system work? How does the natural system operate? This is a basic focus. Then we also look at what is the human impact on the environment? The activities of human. How does it affect the environment? And there are key contributions from the environmental studies, ecosystem service, which means that you are valuing the benefits nature provides. What are the benefits derived from nature? Example like clean air, like water, like pollination. You remember our elementary integrated science, when we talk of pollination, the transfer of polygreen. These are done by insects, and they are natural things. What contribution? So from the environmental perspective, how do they look like? Then the carrying capacity, which look at the limit of ecosystem to sustainable or to sustain human activity. What is the limit of ecosystem to sustain human activity? Then we look at biodiversity conservation, where basically we highlight the importance of species and ecosystem diversity. The importance of species, the different species of animal. What are they for? What benefit, what importance do we derive? Ecosystem diversity. Then we look at climate science, understanding and modeling global warming and its impact. Then we look at its roles in sustainability. How environmental study guide environmental policy and conservation. What is the role environmental study does to environmental policy and conservation? How do they formulate it? It is from environmental studies. Then we look at the informed strategies under the roles in sustainability. The environmental study gives us informed strategies for renewable energy, informed strategies for pollution control, informed strategies for land use. Basically, these are what we can get from it. Let's look at the second interdisciplinary perspective is the perspective of the sociology. The sociology look at social infrastructure. The sociology look at behavior and culture and institution. How does social structure affect sustainable development? How does behavior? Some of our behavior leads to indiscriminate cutting down of trees, usage of resources to the extent that we don't have the future in mind or in heart. These are the issues, the perspective the sociology looked at. How culture affects sustainability, and how does institutions also affect sustainability? There are key contributions. One of the contributions of the sociology is the social equity and justice. And this examines how sustainability effort impact different groups, the marginalized group, the vulnerable groups, the educated groups, the different groups, category of people. How does sustainability effort impact them? And that's why the idea of social equity and justice is very vital. Another key contribution is what we call community engagement, encouraging participation, governance, and bottom-up solution. That the community are adequately involved in decision-making as regards sustainable issues. As I said earlier, you don't just impose things on them. You give them the opportunity to make input and contribute. You don't just bring every solution, everything from the top. You allow bottom-up approach. It means that the community are involved in the decision-making from the bottom, from the grassroots. Now we look at the cultural dimension. Understanding how cultural values shape environmental behavior. Of course, our culture determines how we relate and behave to our environment. So cultural dimension is also a key, very vital when it comes to our values and how these values shape environmental behavior. Then we have what we call the urban sociology. And this urban sociology is addressing sustainability in cities, including housing. How do you build? The urban sociology look at transport and waste. How do we manage our waste? How do we dispose them? How do we ensure that our waste don't affect the community? What type of transport? Is it a green initiated transport? Then we look at the role, the sociological role in sustainability is to ensure that social inclusiveness and equity in development. You don't just engage and embark in development. You ensure that there's social inclusiveness. You ensure that there is equity. And finally, one of the role again is to help build resilience and to empower community. It empowers the community. It helps to build resilience. Very, 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 very. The other interdisciplinary perspective, the economics. Basically, what the economic does is that they focus on allocation of scarce resources and analysis of trade-off. Having this basic understanding that our resources cannot be enough, cannot be sufficient. So they are valuable resources. How are they utilized? How are they applied? How are they distributed to ensure sustainability? What can we trade off? And there are key contributions. One of the contributions is what we call the environmental economics. The environmental economics, internalizing environmental cost, carbon pricing, the pollution taxes. All of these are the issue of environmental economics. Then we have the ecological economics. Viewing the economics as embedded within the environment, stresses biophysical limits. Then we have the cost-benefit analysis. Weight long-term cost and benefit of developing project. Now for every project, what is the cost? What is the benefit? Ensuring the essence of the cost-benefit analysis is to ensure that the benefit from the project outweigh the cost in engaging and embarking on the project. That the cost of implementing the project should not be more than the benefit that they are going to derive from implementing such a project. And particularly when we look at the sustainability of the project, then we look at the sustainable development indicators. And part of the sustainable development indicators are the GDP and the IDI, gross domestic product, where genuine progress indicator, that is the GPI, play critical role. These are the indicators you use. When we talk about the HDI, the Human Development Index, that the GDP versus the Human Development Index are basic indicators we use when we talk about sustainable development. And the genuine progress indicator, the GPI.
But we need to celebrate you.
And what are the roles of the economy?
No, but there is stuff that happening in the office there. We can just come and take one or two bottles. Okay, but I will choose a venue and I'll let you know.
Abu Sesu, you are disturbing us.
Now. We're sorry, sir. We are back.
Thank you for distracting my class. Very soon we are going to place a fine For those of you, yeah, I should click the screen back. Please, are we together?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, when we look at the sustainable, okay, so what are the roles of the economy? I say one is to promote market-based solution. There's emission trading. To balance short-term economic growth with long-term ecological health. I like you to take note. Balance short-term economic growth with long-term ecological health. The way we use our environment today determine our health tomorrow. Some of the people suffering from cancer, I'll give a good one example. I remember where I was living 2007, 2008 as a postgraduate student. My landlord decided to allow them to come and plant one of the mouse, the antenna, this communication mouse, not knowing the implication, the distance to which that should be planted from the house to be a far distance. But because of the economic benefit, he allowed them. And the long-term implication is that it results to what we call cancer and the rest. So we are saying that the economic perspective is to ensure that there's a balance between a short-term economic growth with long-term ecological health. Then another interdisciplinary perspective is on the political science and governance. And basically, the political science and governance focus on power dynamics, the power dynamics of sustainable development, the policy making. The government formulate policy, and whether we like it or not, the policy formulated by the government determine whether the land will be sustainable, the environment will be sustainable or not. The institutions, the various government and non-governmental institutions responsible for sustainable development, the international relations. We have seen situations where dams in other countries were opened and they have effect on us in Nigeria. So all of these political science and governance are very key. And what are they? The environmental governance, the national and global framework for managing resources. We have the national and global framework for managing resources. We have policy analysis, evaluating effectiveness of sustainable policies. Then we have multilateral cooperation. Multilateral cooperation, where we look at evaluating effectiveness of sustainability policy. Then we look at justice and power, analyzing who control what, resources, and how decisions are made. And there are roles. In the political science role is to shape regulation, the laws and international agreement, and to promote accountability and transparency and equity in decision making. Let's tidy up on that as we look at the engineering and psychology. The engineering and technology. Then we look at psychology. Then we'll take some questions. So let's look at So let's look at the engineering and technology, the practical solution for sustainable infrastructure. They look at the practical solution. What are the practical things that can be done to sustain infrastructure, energy, and design? They look at the green technology like the solar, the wind, the bioenergy, the water purification system. We look at sustainable architecture, that is energy efficient building, the green materials. Then we look at the circular economy innovation, where we look at design for reused, where we look at recycling and minimal waste. Then we look at smart cities and infrastructure, where we have data-driven solution for energy, transport, and waste. Transport and waste. Then we look at the roles in sustainability, enables scalable technological solutions to environmental problems. Then we look at drives innovations in renewable energy and sustainable products, and basically sustainable production. These are the focus of the engineering. Focus of the engineering. Then let's look at psychology and behavioral sciences. Basically, these are they look at the human attitude, the behavior, and decision-making process. The key contributions are the behavioral changes model, understanding and influencing sustainable behaviors. This model influences sustainable behavior. The risk perception, how people view environmental threat, example, climate change deniers, all of it. Then the nudging, where designing systems that guide people towards sustainable choices. You don't just make choices. For every choice you make, you ensure that they are sustainable. Then we look at the environmental identity, how people value and self-concept influence their action. These are very key. Then we look at the role in sustainability, promoting individual and collective action for sustainable living. The essence is to see that individual and groups and public live sustainably, enhances communication and education strategies. These are basically the psychological aspect. Basically the psychological aspect. Let's look at the education and communication. The education and communication. The education looked at knowing, dissemination, public awareness, and lifelong learning. So these are key issues. How knowledge are disseminated, how public are aware of sustainable development in everything we do, and lifelong learning. And like this, there are key contributions. The Education for Sustainable Development, the ESD, which promote critical thinking, system thinking, and value for sustainability. Look at media and communication, which shape public discourse and awareness around sustainability issues. Then we look at curriculum development, where we integrate sustainability into school and university programs. And there are basic roles in sustainability. They help to build, inform, and engage citizens. They also foster a culture of sustainability across generations. These are basically the education and communication perspective. Then we have the anthropology and indigenous knowledge, which is also very, very important.
Yes, please.
The focus on the anthropology and indigenous knowledge is human-environment relation over time and across culture. How human, the environment, human relationship. How does human relate with the environment over time? And how does our culture respond to our environment? And the key contributions are the traditional ecological knowledge, the TEK, and these are time-tested sustainable resource use practice. We also have what we call the ethnographic method, which deepen understanding of local practice and values. This helps you to understand how the local practice around the environment. Then we look at the cultural sustainability, preserving language, traditions, and identity in development. And no matter the development, language, traditions, and identity should be maintained. You can agree with me that even many of us that are adults cannot speak our language. Many of our languages have gone into extinction. Many of our traditions and values have gone into extinction. And what are the roles of anthropology in sustainability? Is to promote culturally appropriate and community-led approaches. It's to challenge top-down, one-size-fits-all development model. It means that the basic essence is to ensure cultural appropriate and community-led approach. That anything we want to do, the culture, the community must be factored in. Thank you for listening so far. Before I make progress, where do you click here? Yes. Okay. So please, are there questions?
No, my house deep like in the that flood
If
drainage.
you have question, please can you raise up your hand? If you have question, can you unmute and raise up your hand? But if there is no question, the synopsis is wide. I will progress.
It started.
Okay.
The last time I called him, said there was still waiting.
So there is no question. So let's make progress.
Yes,
sir. The challenges.
Yes, sir.
In sustainable social development. The challenges in sustainable social development. There are key challenges I'd like us to look at carefully. The first challenge is what we call inequality and social exclusion. Inequality and social exclusion. The number two challenge is what we call poverty and lack of basic services. Poverty and lack of basic services. Then the number three challenge is weak governance and corruption. Weak governance and corruption. Weak governance and corruption. Then the third challenge is education and skill gap. Education and skill gap. Then the fifth challenge is conflict and displacement. Conflict and displacement. Then we have cultural homogenization and loss of identity. Cultural homogenization and loss of identity. Then finally, we have what we call urbanization and social fragmentation. So what do we really mean by inequality and social exclusion? By this, we are saying that the economic disparity, the social discrimination, the racial injustice, and marginalization of vulnerable groups. And when we talk about the vulnerable group, we are talking about the migrants, the indigenous people. So basically, we discovered that there's an economic disparity. So when we talk about inequality and social exclusion, we are talking about this economic disparity that is existing this gender discrimination between the male folks and the female folks, this racial injustice among the white and the blacks, and even within our local, there is also discrimination and injustice. There is marginalization of the vulnerable groups. These are the basic stuff we are talking about. It's a major challenge where economic disparity exists. The low class, the middle class, and the higher class. And all of these have impact. They weaken social cohesion. As a result of this disparity, discrimination, injustice, and marginalization, we observe that it becomes difficult for social cohesion to take place. It reduces trust in institutions, no more trust, and limit opportunities for equitable development. Disparity limit opportunities. So these are the basic challenges that comes up with inequality and social exclusion. Then we have what we call the poverty and the lack of basic services. Persistent poverty leads to inadequate access to education, to health care, to clean water and sanitation. If there is a persistent poverty, many people will not be able to have access to education. People are denied the right of education because of poverty. They are denied the right of health care. They can't access good medical facilities. Then clean water. Many of our environment, you discover that they don't have access to clean water. Then the matter of sanitation is also a great issue. And this hinders human development and trap communities in cycle of deprivation. So when these things are lacking, human development will not be there. Then the third is weak governance and corruption. Weak governance and corruption. What do we mean by that? When we lack transparency, accountability, and participatory governance, undermine developmental effort. When there is no transparency, when our government are not transparent, they are not accountable, and it is not a participatory governance, development are undermined. Development are undermined. And this leads to resource mismanagement and exclusion of marginalized voice from decision making. With this, when there is no transparency, when there is no accountability, when there is no participatory governance, the challenge and issues and the impact of it is that resources will be mismanaged by the few because they are not accountable, they are not transparent. And there will be exclusion of the marginalized individuals or groups. They will not be allowed to air their voice or their voices and their opinion. It becomes a problem. Then the number 4 challenge is education and skill gap. Unequal access to quality education and lifelong learning opportunities. Discover that people don't have access to quality education. The poor are denied these privileges. There's a wide gap between the poor and the rich. Education becomes a serious problem. Unequal access to education. And this limits people's ability to participate in sustainable economy and adapt to future challenges. When you are not educated, you cannot participate in sustainable economy. Then we have the conflict and displacement, which we are recording every day, year and year. Armed conflict, political instability, climate-related displacement disrupt social structure. Several persons are destructed because of flood. The killings in villages by X-Men and the rest have caused a lot of displacement. And these have created humanitarian crisis and setbacks to social development for generations. What should have been done have been hindered. And these are basic challenges. Basic challenges. Then we have the cultural and genization and loss of identity.
Local government.
Globalization can erode local culture. Our local culture has been eroded by globalization. Our languages have gone into extinction. Many of our children cannot speak our dialect. Our traditions have gone into extinction. Globalization have taken place. And these have undermined cultural diversity. We no longer value people's culture, which is vital for resilient, for adaptable communities. So these are very key issues. And the last challenge is what we call the urbanization and social fragmentation. Urbanization and social fragmentation. What we say rapid urban growth without planning lead to informal settlement. A lot of growth in the urban area, but most of the growth are not on the basis of plan. As a result of that, there are a lot of informal settlement, social isolation, and strain on services. And you discover that this increasing inequality and undermines sustainable city development. These are key issues that are very, very vital as a challenge for sustainable development. So finally this morning, before we go on break, let's quickly look at the opportunities. The opportunities in sustainable social development. The number one opportunity is empowering women and marginalized group. Gender equality and inclusion lead to broader economic participation and stronger social resilience. So women are empowered, the marginalized group are empowered, and that results to decrease in inequality. And when this inequality are addressed, you discover that gender equality is achieved. And when gender equality is achieved, it leads to inclusion, a broader inclusion in economic participation. And this support inclusive policy. This also education for girls and protection of priority. And protection of priority. The second opportunity is that investment in education and health. And universal access to education and healthcare promote human capital and long-term development. When you have access and invest in education, you are promoting human capital and long-term health programs are maintained. The third is social innovation and entrepreneurship, which is local solution, cooperative and social enterprise can address social needs sustainably. And when we have our local enterprises, cooperative, they are able to meet up with the sustainable need. And this foster innovation ecosystem and provide funding and training for social entrepreneur. For social entrepreneur. Finally, for the number 4 is technology for social inclusion. And what we mean technology, these are digital tools can improve access to services, civic participation, and inclusion. You can agree with me that many of us are doing this program from the comfort of our room, our offices. These are technology, and they are enhancing sustainable social development. And this promote the more graft, and this bridge the digital divide by improving connectivity and digital literacy. Digital literacy. Then we have participatory governance and civic engagement. Participatory governance and civic engagement. This has done with inclusion, inclusive policy making, to more equitable and acceptable outcome, to more equitable and acceptable outcome. And this promote democratic participation, transparency, and community-driven development. So the community are involved. So the number 6 opportunity is cultural revitalization and indigenous knowledge, supporting cultural identity and indigenous practices strengthen community resilience. We support cultural identity. People should know where they are coming from. When you see their cultural mark, you should be able to identify with them and appreciate them for who they are and for their culture. And this helps to integrate traditional knowledge into education, conservation, and governance. And finally, in terms of the opportunity, is resilient urban planning. Resilient urban planning. And what do we mean? This has to do with smart, inclusive urban design, enhancing quality of life and social integration. Smart, inclusive urban design. You don't just design. You don't just allow people to themselves. Every structure, every design should be designed in such a way that it will serve sustainable purpose. It will serve preservation. It will serve protection. It will serve the people. So basically, these are the 7 opportunities we can derive. There may be others. Just as I explained before, there are challenges. What are the challenges? I say inequality and social exclusion, poverty and lack of basic services, weak governance and corruption. Yes. Stopping at this one. Weak governance and corruption, education and skill gap, conflict and displacement, cultural homogenization and loss of identity, and urbanization and social fragmentation. And as I tidy up this class this morning, before we come back, I say the opportunities are empowering women and marginalized groups, investing in education and health, social innovation and entrepreneurship, technology for social inclusion, participatory governance and civic engagement, and cultural revitalization and indigenous knowledge, and resilient urban planning. Thank you for listening to this morning's section. I want to believe that we have learned 1 or 2 things from this morning class. In the next 1-2 minutes, we'll be going off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Are we
sir.
together?
Yes,
sir.
together,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you enjoy the
Thank you,
class?
sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we
We
do.
are
We
enjoying the
do.
class, sir.
That's a
We
way
do enjoy the
presentation,
Do
class.
sir.
you learn anything?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Very well, sir.
Lord.
So I look forward to having you by 1 p.m.
Yes, sir.
It's all right, sir.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Your faces are looking fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Your presentation is nice, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. When we come back, I will ask the question.
It's okay.